back, everybody, to Brothers and Boss Battles, a video game showdown, a podcast where my brothers and I discuss video games, new and old. I'm Anthony Frizaglia, and along with my two brothers, Pete and Tom, we're looking forward toward another good week of video game discussion. As some of you may know, but for those of you who don't know, this is how the podcast works. We will discuss one game per week for the first 3 weeks of a particular cycle. That cycle fits within a particular genre or category of games. We'll discuss what we liked about the games, what we didn't like about the games, their story, graphics, gameplay, music, effect on the gaming industry, and whatever else we decide to talk about. After each of the 3 games gets its own episode, on the 4th week, the 3 games enter into our showdown, or because we're brothers, a bro-down, where they'll go up against each other, and the 3 of us will debate which one is the best of that particular cycle's category. Today, we'll be discussing Conker's Bad Fur Day and its remake, Conker, Live and Reloaded. The original, Conker's Bad Fur Day, was released on March 5th, 2001 on the N64 by Rareware, and Conker, Live and Reloaded, was released for the Xbox in 2005. The game was also made available as part of the compilation of Rareware games in the Rare Replay, released in 2015 for the Xbox One. Help greedy, foul-mouthed, binge-drinking Conker the squirrel tell the tale of his begrudging ascent to the throne of the Panther King. Pete, why don't you start us off and give us your initial thoughts of the game, let us know what you played it on, when you played it, etc.
Yep. So I did play this back, when it first came out, or close to when it first came out on the Nintendo 64, and I really liked it. I had very specific memories of playing it and remember really enjoying it. This time around, I played it on Xbox, the Live and Reloaded, the remaster version. This game is definitely far from perfect, but I really like it. It feels unique and different to me, and I'll leave it at that for my initial thoughts.
Hey, Tom, what about you?
Yeah, so similarly, I did play this game back, Conker's Bad Fur Day, back on the N64 around the time where it launched. And also similarly, I remember having pretty fond memories of the game. I also did play it, the remake when it was originally released on Xbox back in 2005. So yeah, I have a bit of history with this game. And then for the refresher for today's episode, I dusted off the old Xbox and replayed Live and Reloaded.
All right, and as for me, I actually, unlike my brothers, never played this game before. I forget which one of you two, might have been you, Pete, who suggested, playing this as part of the 3D puzzle, 3D platformer category.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, so I played it for the first time. I played it on the Rare Replay, which, unlike Live and Reloaded, is a pretty, I guess, honest port of the original game, from what I understand. So I had a pretty, I guess, sort of like original experience, but just wasn't using the N64 controllers, rather used my Xbox controller for that. So, I think there's a lot to talk about this this game. It's definitely unique. Just reading up on it, even just not getting into like the game itself, but just playing it too. I mean, you see how much of a departure it is from previous N64 platformers, and we'll get into it in a minute. But first, let's take a quick break and get the responses to the last episode's mid-episode filler question. All right, everyone. Last episode, we reviewed Banjo-Kazooie, and we asked a Banjo-Kazooie specific Would You Rather question based on the famed villain Gruntilda. We asked, would you rather burst boils of another person for a day, sleep in a dumpster for a night, or drink a camel spit milkshake? All right, we did a little poll online on our various social medias and such. Tom, why don't you give us the results of those polls? See what some of the listeners prefer to do out of these three horrible choices.
Yeah, sure. So we had the poll set up on our Spotify episode page for this episode. We also had it on an Instagram story, and it's also as a post on X, formerly Twitter. So make sure you guys are checking out those platforms throughout the week, just to get some answers in. We really appreciate that.
Tom, why don't you, before you get to the poll, why don't you just give those handles again?
Yeah, sure. We can be found on Instagram and X, formerly Twitter, at Bros Boss Battles. So that's BROS Boss Battles.
Very good. All right, Tom,
yeah,
down to the poll.
So for the results, it was a real close one. Actually, it was as close as it gets because we actually had a two-way draw on this one. And those top two choices were spend a day bursting people's boils and sleep in a dumpster for a night. Something told me that those would be the two more popular ones.
One would think that, but why don't we give our answers? Pete, start us off.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm surprised to hear that because I actually went with that third choice, the camel spit milkshake.
Yeah.
So, okay, so for me, I have like a great fear of rats and rodents, as you two know, and you know, roaches and everything. So spending a night in a dumpster just was not going to happen for me. There's just too much risk of critters and things. Now, bursting boils, like, maybe doesn't sound that awful to some of you, but like, you have to remember, you're doing this all day. It is people's bodily fluid that I'm pretty sure smells, like the pus smells. Like, I just feel like that has the potential to scar me for life. So I kind of narrowed it down to the camel spit milkshake, and the more I thought about it, the more it made sense to me as like the only choice you could make. First of all, the other ones are taking like 8 hours, right? Sleeping for 8 hours, spending a whole day doing the boils. This I could chug in 30 seconds and be done with it. And another thing,
spend the whole day sick, maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. People eat camel, people eat bugs. Like, I don't think so. I really feel like if someone gave you a camel spit milkshake and you didn't know it was a camel spit milkshake, you'd probably be like, wow, this is pretty good. So that's what I went with.
Yeah. All right. Maybe the other flavors in the milkshake could drown out the camel spit flavor.
If there's other flavors, but we don't know that that's.
Well, it's got to be milk. It's a milkshake, so at least there's milk or cream or something.
Unless the camel spit is very frothy.
It's true. Who knows?
Well, so I'll go next, and I couldn't stand the thought of the camel spit milkshake, so I took that one off right from the start. The other two were a little tougher, but I ultimately went with bursting people's boils for a day. It just sounds like one of those, unwanted, dirty jobs that you'd have to do, and you just suck it up for, an 8-hour workday and get it done. It's not ideal, but I think it's the best of the three. Tom?
Yeah, I too immediately eliminated the idea of camel spit milkshake for this. Yeah, that one I feel like it could really just make you sick for the whole day. So not
Pete's
worth it.
on an island by himself on that one, I think.
Yeah, so I narrowed it down to the other two. Sleep in a dumpster for a night. I didn't love that one either, just because there's too many variables there. Is it full of trash? Is it empty? Is it a cold night where you're going to be out there freezing? So I feel like that was just too variable there. So I ultimately chose spend a day bursting people's boils. It's disgusting for sure, but I feel like most of the pain is on the people who have the boils. So at least there's that.
All right, there you have it. Some good logical answers there. It's an answer to our poll.
Thanks for all that have participated, and stay tuned for the rest of the episode and for the Would You Rather question later in this episode. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Okay, we're back. Let's get into it. Do either of you want to start off? Maybe just
Yeah. Let me start off.
Yeah.
So before we get into the gameplay, I wanted to make a note of So I really like the music in this game, especially the main overworld theme. That it's like the first area that you enter, where you're doing the most the most of the work. So after the tutorial, basically. I really love that theme so much so that I actually bought the track on iTunes and set it as my alarm. So I wake up to that every day now, and it's great. And another thing, semi-related, I think I really liked, maybe not entirely like the entire cast, but specifically Conker's voice actor. I thought was really good. And I don't know, just like the quips and the dialogue that he had throughout the game, I thought was very well done. So I thought that was worth a shout out before we get into like the gameplay elements.
Yeah, and with the voice acting, I guess people take it for granted now, but back then it was sort of rare, no pun intended, to have like voice acting in games. So I think the fact that not only was there a lot of voice acting of a lot of the characters, but quality voice acting, I think was sort of a testament to the to the quality of the game in that respect. I certainly have my issues with this, which we'll get into. But Pete, any secondary initial thoughts? I guess like before we get into the review in earnest.
Yeah, well, on the voice acting, it's funny because I had made a similar note. Now we have to remember this came out near the end of the life cycle of the N64. So there were a few games before this release that had voice acting, but not many. So, and it was really well done here. So that was on the voice acting. Also, there's a lot of interesting sort of history in the game's development that maybe we'll get into later. And part of that has to do with the mature content of it, and
right.
To me, somewhat surprisingly, even being allowed, by Nintendo.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. But all right, so for those, this game is very old at this. It's over 20 years old at this point. So, there probably will be some spoilers, or there will be some spoilers. With this game in our discussion, as listeners probably would have suspected anyway.
Or isn't much to write home about anyway.
Yeah, well, the story is basically nothing. But there are particular gameplay portions that are probably better if you don't have it spoiled. But it's probably not the end of the world either. Just as basically the story of the game is this: you play as Conker, this red squirrel, and at the beginning of the game, you kind of see he's sort of begrudgingly sitting on a throne, and the game is essentially how he got to that point. He's supposed to be hanging out with his girlfriend Berry. He goes and gets very drunk at the bar, however, and then winds up stumbling out of there and getting into all of these situations that drive the plot forward. The plot being is that there is the king of this Panther land, the King Panther, who cannot seem to keep the glass of milk on his table from falling over. So in order to do so, he enlists the help of one of his evil scientists, who suggests that they need a being, which happens to be the exact size of Conker, to act as the fourth leg on the table, so that that the King Panther's milk doesn't spill. And that is essentially the plot of the game. You're sort of going through these levels, and at some point you're kind of trying to keep away from the the Panther's goons that are trying to do the Panther's bidding and trap you to use you as a leg of a table. So it sounds really stupid, and a lot of things in this game will sound stupid if you haven't played them. But
yeah, I mean, it was intentionally
yes,
ridiculous, the plot of the game. Yeah, I mean, and like from your user perspective, you're pretty much just like trying to get home. That's really your goal as Conker, and then all this crazy stuff keeps happening.
Yeah, that's really it. I guess you don't really know until later on, or at least the character doesn't know that they're being pursued, and it's just sort of like, part Mr. Magoo, part like just trying to get home. But yeah, this game is not played for its story. It's based, it's if you like platformers and you like this particular type of 3D platformers, made by Rare in the late 90s, early 2000s, it's something that would be up your alley.
Yeah, I want to push back on just a little bit about this story. Now, the story is certainly not great or epic, but it's essentially a comedy. There are a lot of comedic elements and jokes, and some people might like that more than some epic story.
Yeah.
So, it's not just the gameplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's fair, and the different stages and parts of the game parody actual films and a lot of classic films. There's there's a whole scene of Saving Private Ryan. There's The Matrix. There's a whole part with Jaws, a couple of others thrown in there. So it does pull from pop culture and big movies like that as well. Yeah, but I mean, as a 3D platformer, I think the development of this was essentially to have people play a fun platformer. But to your point, Pete, it is true that, and when we go into the sort of the history of the development, it kind of was also to be a little different because these 3D platformers were like, just being churned out at that time.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you want to get into some of the gameplay, I mean, this game had a lot of varied gameplay elements. I feel like it wasn't just like a 3D platformer. I mean, at least on
but it's got to fit the category.
Well, no, for sure. I mean, that definitely, if
I
you
think
ask
that's
somebody,
the overarching category,
yeah,
but you're right. It had,
it's a, like I say, it's a racing game or it's a shooter, but, it has some of those elements, like, in varying degrees of deftness.
That's one of the things I liked about the game. And
yeah, me too.
It fits here because the game isn't really taking itself seriously. So it kind of fits that you're kind of doing a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Racing, shooting, you're in a tank, platforming.
Yeah.
Urinating on the rocks.
Yeah, I mean, there's and
everybody's favorite parts, the swimming parts.
Man. Swimming in these 3D platformers where you run out of air, it's just the absolute worst. And this isn't the only one that does it.
Yeah.
Other games we discussed.
It was a little easier for us. As I understand the Live and Reloaded version, it takes you could hold your breath longer basically than in the original.
So I didn't play Live and Reloaded. As I mentioned in the intro, but like I did watch sort of like a speedrun playthrough on of someone playing Live and Reloaded, and I have to say the graphics did look like a lot better, a lot smoother.
Yeah, I was thinking that too as I was like replaying it for this episode, and like the graphics really look good for a game from 2005 on like the original Xbox. Like,
I mean, even
I feel like they really could have passed for like an almost current gen game.
Yeah, it looked really good, especially for me comparing it to just having recently played on the what essentially was the 2001 N64 version, and even that had pretty good graphics. But yeah, the Live and Reloaded looked really good.
Yeah,
I think
I think they also it was a good remake because I feel like they fixed a lot of they made a lot of quality of life improvements in the game, like especially with the camera.
And speaking of, I think
Yeah.
that segues nicely into what I think was one of probably my main complaint about the game, and it's just that, I mean, the camera angles and the controls and were just, to me, very, very poor in the rare replay / N64 version. Just the camera you're trying to spin it around to the right angle and it gets caught on a wall, and I don't know what it is with these 3D platformers where they, the controls are so imprecise, and yet they give you these, narrow walkways over like a huge drop to have to walk in so many portions of the game that it's just like you fall and then you have to do it all over again. It's just, I don't know. It's some parts are unbearable with that. The one in particular. What?
No, I was going to say, I think that was really just a limitation of the technology of the time. Like
Yeah.
They weren't able to do multiple stick inputs at the same time.
Yeah, it was. And like, how sometimes you're rotating the camera and it kind of gets stuck on a wall or something. But it was, and I've noticed that in all this sort of, in this genre of that time. But I feel like it was a little worse in Conker.
It was a little worse in Conker, you said.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
no, I agree.
Conker was, like I said, came out at the end of the N64 life cycle. So theoretically, it should be a little better.
Yeah. Because, in the other games that we discussed in this category, I mean, I definitely didn't feel that in Donkey Kong 64. And not to compare, because we want to save that for the Throwdown episode, but I'm just saying, like...
No, definitely. Conker's was worse, in my opinion. But what were you going to say, in what part in particular?
Well, there was one... Yeah, there's the part where you're trying to get all of the bees to tickle that flower. And one set of the bees was like all the way up on like you have to climb, and then there's a bucket, and then you have to kind of, I think, walk on the bucket, like on the rim of the big bucket. Because so not only is it thin, but it's curved, and it's just like, it was so difficult to like, I wound up falling off of there several times.
Yeah, no, definitely. There was definitely a lot of that.
Like, and to me, that's not like... That's my one of my main criticisms about a game like this. It's just like, it's not adding to the game. Like, if you want to make a part of a game hard, it shouldn't be just because the camera angles and the controls are poor. And I feel like this game, that happened a lot, where it was just like, okay, this isn't a really tough boss, or, this isn't a really tough area where you have to input combo really fast and you just couldn't do it fast enough. It's just like, you're just like gently pushing on the control stick, and it's just like you're the slightest bit off and you fall off, and then you have to do a whole part all over again. And I don't know, just not a big fan of that.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I do feel like a lot of challenging parts in this game was not just because of controls or cameras. Like in the war part near the end, that was tough.
But there's just other poor controls, and I'm glad you brought up that part, because that part and the other part where you have where there's the zombies and you have to use the gun to shoot them in the head.
Yeah, that was my favorite part. That was awesome.
Yeah. But see, what's annoying there is that, so for those who haven't played it, you would use at least on the Xbox version, you would use the left joystick to move your character. But then when you had to shoot, you would, equip your gun, but then the left stick would control the aiming of the gun, and you'd have to use the right stick in order to like move forward or backwards. It's just like, that switch in the controls, like just by equipping a weapon or not, it just, I guess it was a limitation at the time, but that was extremely frustrating to me too.
Yeah, that's something that I think they resolved in Live and Reloaded. Those parts were actually like quite a bit of fun.
The concepts are good. I could see them being fun because, especially like in a platform, like a cartoonish platformer, you're not really expecting to shoot things, and then when you do, it's kind of like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
But
Just be glad you weren't doing it on the N64 controller.
I guess not. Yeah. What were some of your guys' favorite parts and like least favorite parts?
Yeah, so I'll start since I mentioned I like these shooting parts, where you had to shoot the zombies with that, like a shotgun, and then the whole war sequence I really liked. Those are probably my favorite too.
That war sequence controls notwithstanding was still really tough.
Yeah, it was tough. It was challenging.
Is that the section where there's a part where there's that red netting, like those red laser security like areas?
Yeah, that is part of that sequence.
Yeah, that was really
yeah, that was tough when you're trying to get out. And
right,
I basically was resolved to the fact that I couldn't avoid all of them, and I think I just intentionally got hit once or twice.
Yeah, it was tough to do that. Tom, what about you?
I can see that part being hard with less than stellar controls.
Yeah.
The zombie part I liked a lot too. I liked the shooting aspect there, and even the part where you get transformed into a bat and you need to like poo on the villagers and pick them up and bring them back to like the grinder. That part I thought was fun too, and also like another example of the varied gameplay.
Yeah, that part was actually pretty cool. I like that, where you're trying to like, it's supposed to be like a relative of Conker who's like essentially Dracula, and like he's
yeah,
and he's like, I guess if you don't do as he says, like he might kill Conker, so Conker winds up transforming into the bat, and having him round up all of these villagers and pick them up and put them in the grinder, as Tom said. So yeah, that was pretty funny, and pretty good.
Also, just in general, like I don't know, like I feel like I really like flowed really nicely through this last playthrough I had with the game, where I just kind of like I didn't really struggle much to like know where to go or anything like that, and I don't know, like to me the whole game was really just like fun. There's no like real part that I guess if I had to pick a part that I didn't like or that I liked the least, it would be the part where you're like the prehistoric part.
Oh yeah.
So some of the stuff there. I mean, there's the infamous lava race that. I was actually reading some stuff online. Like there were people who quit the game at that point because they just couldn't do it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I found that acceptably hard. Like it certainly was hard, but I was like, I can get this, and then like eventually you do.
I completely agree as well. I mean, it took me probably an hour just to do that, complete that race, and the total playthrough was probably 15 hours, maybe 20 hours max. So it was a good portion of it, but you steadily like you felt like you were getting better as you were playing it. Like you knew I knew at least I was going to be able to complete it eventually.
Yeah.
And to me that was I liked it. That was a fun part for me.
Yeah,
I thought it was fun too. Yeah.
I mean, parts like that sort of remind me of old games from like that era, and even before, where it's like it's really tough, but because of the limitations of games and the length of games at that time, like they kind of had to make them tough so that you'd have to keep replaying certain parts. So the game wasn't done in 2 hours, but what Pete said is true. It's like that classic kind of thing where you just, okay, you get a little better each time, and then eventually you get it. Like that kind of difficulty stuff is good and acceptable to me in like those type of games, but just like,
for sure.
Yeah, some of the other stuff, and I don't know, I can't necessarily say that I knew exactly what to do as much as like it seems like you're saying, Tom, as far as some of the
I mean, it's not like I always like knew like, okay, now I know I have to go here. Like, it's just, I don't know, maybe I got lucky and I just kind of like was going the right way a lot of the time.
You basically weren't running around for an hour and like
like I never felt like lost or anything like that.
Yeah, the one time that happened with me was after you defeat the Great Mighty Pooh. I guess you have to jump into one of the holes that he pops out of, when you're fighting him. And I didn't realize that, so I kind of left that cabin and went back to the whole rest of the world. And I actually had to use a walkthrough just to,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, they kind of show you like after he gets flushed, like you could see like a platform down there. That I don't know. At least I
Yeah,
saw it, and I was like,
I missed
okay,
it.
I think
Yeah,
I should probably jump in. Yeah.
yeah, and kind of to this point, but not exactly. Another thing I didn't really love about this game, I feel like it occurred a couple of times, was where you were kind of high up, very elevated on some platform or whatever, and you essentially had to jump off, and then you had the context sensitive light bulb and you turn into an anvil or something. And like, there was a couple of times where you really didn't know that. And you were like wondering, am I jumping to my death right now? And then, so I didn't like that. But speaking of the context sensitive things, I actually really like that sort of game mechanic.
Yeah.
And
Well, that kind of changed up things because then, like certain times in
Exactly.
those context-sensitive things, you'd get knives to throw to cut wires down or defeat enemies, and other times, you like you said, you turn it to the anvil to bang down through something that you needed to do. So, yeah,
That was cool because it's a way of like kind of guiding the user too. It's like, okay, you see this big D platform, you know, you have to go there and do something. And they also presented it explained it and presented it in a funny way. So that was cool.
right, yeah,
yeah, I also like how it just created diversity in the game.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of games, especially back then, you kind of felt like you were doing the same thing over and over again. Whereas, you know, if you go right down to it, I guess you kind of are. You're getting into this platform pressing B, but it felt different
yeah.
every time.
So Pete mentioned the battle against the mighty Pooh, and that's probably the iconic battle or part or scene in this game, and it's really funny. So you wind up getting to this area where you have to fight a giant pile of poo who's singing opera in between trying to attack you. So it's and you defeat it by throwing toilet paper into its mouth. So it's if you thought we were crazy talking about this game before, now you can really think that. But I think that's a good segue to talk about sort of the mature rating and also some of the humor in this game, which was a big part of it and which sort of sets it apart from other N64 and Nintendo titles of the time. So I'll start off with regard to the humor at least, and probably have an unpopular take, but I honestly didn't find it that funny. And I know I'm probably being booed, or people are turning off the podcast right now if they haven't already. But I don't know.
I agree.
It's like that very sort of crude humor. I guess like if you like it, like Beavis and Buttheady, Ren and Stimpy, maybe kind of humor. I just never was a huge fan of that. It's got its funny parts, regardless, and I think that Mighty Pooh battle, the fact that you have to like use corn to get him to pop out and then all of that is pretty funny. But like overall, I don't know. It's just kind of like it's very purposely dirty and crude, and I don't know. It's just not what I'm not what I'm into as far as humor is concerned.
Yeah, I agree with that. I that's why I mentioned at the beginning. Like, I specifically called out Conker as like a highlight for like the voice acting and like the specific dialogue and the quips that he does. Like even like when you're just like collecting the money. And I feel like he was more like at least his lines were more I don't know,
Funny.
intelligent. Yeah, funny,
like
or,
comedic,
exactly. Yeah. Not so like just like fart jokes,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Pete, let's take a little break, and then Pete, I'd like to get your thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're understating it a little. There were characters other than just Conker that I found likable and funny. I like Greg, the Grim Reaper.
Well, he's probably the next best. Yeah. I mean, beyond that, though, I don't know.
I think you're going to disagree, but I also like the pitchfork and the paint can.
I guess
it's funny, but it's just very like I don't know. It seems very like
mature.
elementary.
Oh, the opposite of mature.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. There was like sort of like there's like the fart jokes and poo jokes, and then there's like highly like sexualized cartoon characters. So it's like there's both ends of that, I guess, but it's just like all sort of contributing to like the mature rating. But
Yeah, but overall, I'm not laughing out loud at this game. You know,
yeah.
it's
No, Conker was funny. Like he almost it almost felt like a Seinfeld character to me, Conker, where it was just sort of like he's not the greatest person, but he's like you kind of do feel for him. He's just trying to like get through his day without all this crap happening to him, and it's just like bad thing after bad thing keeps happening, and he's just like sarcastically and like having to deal with it, and just sort of like, oh, here we go again, and it's like so he's funny. The Grim Reaper, was his name Greg?
Yeah, Greg.
Greg, yeah, he was kind of funny because it was just sort of like flipping the Grim Reaper on his head, where he's sort of this like really short, whiny kind of guy who hates cats. And then I think the third best character, like who was like somewhat funny, was the scientist working for the Panther King. He kind of made me laugh, but just like how nervous he was, like in trying to, and like how pissed off he was at his boss for getting the Scotch tape or taping him up or whatever it was. So like they had funny.
I liked him too. Yeah,
they had funny little quips and stuff, but overall, this was like, I don't know, just not like fun. Like, oh my God, I'm laughing.
Yeah, exactly.
Pete or whoever, but I mean, like you had mentioned some of the history and with the, I guess, development and stuff like that. Did you want to get into that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So kind of on what we were just talking about, there were some jokes removed. I think there was a KKK joke that was probably wisely removed. I also think there was a part or a joke about Pokemon that Nintendo basically demanded they remove.
Yeah.
From what I read. But anyway, so you mentioned earlier about how basically after the success of Mario 64, it was kind of like the developers are all racing to make these 3D platformers.
Yeah. Banjo-Kazooie, and the like. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rare was developing Banjo-Kazooie and Conker kind of simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was called Conker's Quest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it got to some sort of gaming showcase or whatever. And basically the comments were that these two games look like the same game.
Yeah.
Banjo and Conker. And some other comments were that they're similar games, but Banjo seems superior.
Yep.
So that was kind of the impetus to sort of change the path forward for the Conker game. So like a year later, it was changed to 12 Tales Conker 64.
Mm-hmm.
You'll probably come across that if you're doing any sort of research on the game.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to focus on more multiplayer, like co-op and competitive multiplayer. And I guess Berry, his girlfriend, was supposed to be the other playable character, and they would have sort of different abilities.
Yeah. And then
go ahead.
No, and then they kind of went into this.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the first change they made in terms of making it more adult was adding the machine gun to the beehive, which is pretty close to the beginning of the game.
Yeah, that's like pretty much the first quest after the tutorial stuff.
And so that was well received. So they were kind of given the freedom to make other changes to make it more mature.
Yeah. I mean, I read also that they essentially marketed this game to college boys, primarily. That's what the marketing was focused on. And clearly it went through a lot of rewrites. I think Conker was a playable character in Diddy Kong Racing.
Yeah. So that was in 1997.
Yeah, that was his introduction. Interesting little side thing. In one of the levels in Banjo-Kazooie, I think you could see a poster of what Barry looked like before the change to this game, and I don't know if you guys caught that.
I think I didn't catch it, but I think I did come across that in reading about either this game or Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the game did not sell well, right? I actually think it was well received.
It was.
critically.
I think it was critically acclaimed, and then
Yeah, but it
Just did
didn't
not
sell
sell.
well. Yeah, I mean the mature rating probably had something to do with that, and then also, as we mentioned a few times, it was released at the end of the N64 life. I think the GameCube was released like 6 months after
yeah,
Conker was released on N64. So
yeah, people are looking to the, which kind of, I just wonder, did Nintendo give Rare this? I mean, they gave Rare this platform because Rare had come through for them several times before. So, it was, but did they allow a game of this sort of maturity to be released on a Nintendo gaming console because it was the end of that particular era? Like, you got to wonder if they had waited until GameCube came out and released this, would it have done better? Would it have played better too, which might have also contributed to it being better received. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say it would have sold better. Maybe not, maybe still not great because of the mature rating.
Yeah.
But that's why I wanted to discuss this game on the podcast, because it was acclaimed critically, but it's not a game that everyone and their mother has played.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's sort of gotten a cult following, and it is sort of rare, like, to have the cartridge because of I guess how poorly it sold. So I don't know if you see it like on these, eBay or whatever, like the if you have the cartridge, it goes for a pretty high amount.
Yeah, that's cool. Because we do.
Do we have the box or just just the cartridge?
Yeah, I don't think we have the box.
No.
Those N64 boxes are quite big. They took up a lot of room.
Yeah. So what else about the game itself? Like, I mean,
yeah, I want to bring up one thing. So like we touched earlier about how the there's a lot of varied gameplay elements, which was cool. But one thing that I think they kind of fell short on was the boss fights. I feel like a lot of these were very repetitive, where like you just kind of keep doing the same thing 3 times and then that's it, you beat the boss. Like usually I feel like in these kinds of games you would do something once and then there would be a slight variation on the second time you have to do it in that boss fight, and then another harder variation on the third time that you have to do it on that fight. But for this, I feel like it was just like the same thing over and over for a lot of the fights. Ones that come to mind are like when you fight that big caveman guy.
Oh yeah, you had to like get the dinosaur to bite his private area.
Well, yeah, you have to like first headbutt him in the groin and then walk behind him and take a bite out of his butt.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah. But it's like that, like it didn't change throughout the whole fight. You just have to do that, like whatever it was, 3 or 4 times, and then you win.
Yeah, it's the same. And the giant poo, same thing. You just have to.
Yeah, that's another one.
And throw the roll at the right time when his mouth's open at different points.
Yeah. So that was the kind of one, I guess, complaint that I had with this game, is that the boss fights could have been a little bit more varied. But the counterpoint to my own point is that there were some fights that actually did do that. Like when you at the boss of the war level, it was like that. It was like I guess it was like a machine with like a little bunny puppet.
Yeah,
or something.
It was like the little girl. And
then, that was annoying. Oh gosh, that whole part was so annoying when you had to hit those submarines with like the rocket, I guess.
Yeah.
And like
that was a little annoying. Yeah.
If they hit you a little bit, you'd fall into the water and you'd have to climb up.
Yeah,
and then
that
targeting
part,
you. And the thing I didn't like about it is that you really had to, again, be very precise on where the rocket hit in order to blow up the submarine. Like there were parts where it's like, okay, if this was real, I would have at least clipped this submarine with my rocket, and it would have probably not be functional anymore. I mean, not to make it too realistic, but that was so annoying, that part. I had almost forgotten about that.
Yeah, that part felt a little. Honestly, it just felt like a little long in my opinion, like the destroying the submarines part. Like I feel like they could have reduced that time a little bit, because it's just like, okay, I'm doing this again. Now I'm running over and I'm shooting another one. And it was a little bit time consuming though, because you had to like keep moving out of the way of their missiles and stuff.
The other like specific parts that were just annoying, because they know the controllers are so bad, but was when you had to ride like that barrel down the spirally, like sort of thin platform, and it's like, come on, this is so annoying and hard.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because it was, I played on the 11 Reloaded remaster, but that only took me a couple of tries. But maybe I got lucky because I could see that
same
being
here.
annoying.
That was at the end of the zombie level, right?
Yeah.
When
you escape, yeah.
I think it's at 2 parts. There is
another point we have to do it, but that one I think was much easier.
Yeah, I think you're
When
right.
you
I think the
Mr.
zombie one
Barrel
was tougher.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of like the ending? Because if you don't, do you remember?
Yeah,
It's sort of like the battle stops at the end.
Yeah, where you kind of breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah, and they starts talking to you.
Yeah,
Again, I guess it just goes with the game.
It's stupid, but yeah, it fits the game well.
Yeah, I will say I actually did like that last battle against the, which was essentially an Aliens parody. And having to, and that goes to your point of like the varied playing elements, where you had to sort of, it's like almost parry the xenomorph's attack so that it would be stunned, and then you grab its tail and try to whip him out of the airlock chamber that on the spaceship that you're in at that particular part of the game. So it's like I actually thought it was fun. That was a challenging, but again, like a fun, challenging part of the game.
Yeah, I agree. It was, it actually involved some form of player skill.
Yeah,
that you learn over time after failing a couple of times.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool, and then
it was a good fight. Yeah,
and then I guess a lot of the better levels or battles sort of drew from these iconic movies, like they have the Matrix parody where you're sort of doing the bullet time attacks and stuff like that. That was fun. The Saving Private Ryan thing. I thought that part was really tough, and also the anytime where you had to use like sort of a firearm in this game, and the controls switched up on you was a little bit annoying. But I could see.
I think the end of that war level was probably the hardest thing in the game for me. Like when you have to escape, when you have to like run out of the beach, down back to the boat, and then there's the teddies are shooting the bazooka, rocket launchers at you.
Very
because
tough.
One hit. Yeah,
it's one hit, and like they just sort of like appear out of nowhere, and because the camera's so awful, it's like it's hard to see them, and then it's hard to shoot them when you see them.
Like they dig up through the sand, so like it's not like you can see them coming because they just pop up out of nowhere. Yeah, that was really difficult.
Yeah, that was tough. It took me way longer than it probably should have. I don't have like a counter, but I think it took me many more hours than it probably should have to beat this game. I should have tried Light and Reloaded.
Yeah, maybe it's because we get a different perspective, but the game is not really that long, but it is challenging.
Yeah. I wrote down my time and have it here in my notes. It was somewhere between 10 and 11 hours for me.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I think that's on the quicker side.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Did you feel you recalled things from when you played it back in 2001 or 2 or whatever?
Maybe subconsciously.
Yeah.
Pete, I remembered a lot of things, but more like the characters and stuff. I don't think I recalled any aspect that helped me complete the game. And I completed it in way more than 11 hours. I must have been 17, 18 hours, I think.
I was probably more along those lines, to be honest. So another thing that I didn't partake in, and I don't know if you guys did or have any, points you may want to share on this, but is the multiplayer version or portion of this game. It did get a lot of credit as well. Just from critics and stuff. So I was wondering if you guys have
even not critics. If you just go on Reddit or online, a lot of people seem to love this multiplayer. So we never played it really as kids on the original N64.
I had forgotten that there even was a multiplayer mode in this game.
Yeah, so I went back on the Rare Replay version just to play the multiplayer, right? Because in Live and Reloaded, they removed many of it, of the games. So I just played each game a couple of times just to kind of see if I remember anything. And I do vaguely remember, like, after having played it, but some of them seemed like they would be a lot of fun. Some of them less fun. And, they had different ones. The one in particular that seemed the most fun to me was like a 4-player called Heist, where, it's for every man for himself. And you had to basically steal of the money bag in the center of the arena and then bring it back to your base. And then as you're doing that, the other 3 players are basically trying to shoot you with weapons that you pick up. And, then you'll drop the money bag and they'll pick, so that's kind of that. They had a couple of war ones, which is probably fun if you have, a bunch of friends playing. But
how many did it support at once? Was it just like...
No, I think it was just 4, I guess.
4, then it probably had bots, I guess, on your team.
Yeah, exactly. And but it was pretty like customizable from what I understand, like the CPU difficulty and different things like that. Yeah,
that's cool. I mean, I guess it's sort of I don't know. I mean, speaking of Rare, I guess they also did what was it? They did 007, which is sort of like maybe they took from that, even though it was just these cartoony characters for some of the multiplayer portions.
Yeah, so I guess we, I'm assuming Tom's the same way. We can't really speak that intelligently of it, but it seems like it was really well regarded, the multiplayer in the original game.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. I didn't go through and replay those modes specifically in preparation for this episode. But yeah, I mean, I think just speaking generally about it, this kind of local couch co-op or couch competitive was, kind of popular back in those days, for people having, especially on the N64, like people having, just parties or, hey, you have friends over, sleepovers or whatever. I know the WWF game, No Mercy, was also like a really popular 4-player N64 game.
Yeah, N64 was cool because it had the ports for the 4 controllers, like right on its system. So
yeah. I would hesitate to call this a multiplayer as a party type game. I feel like it really best works with, 4 people who have the game and are familiar with the it's not like a Mario Kart where you just kind of pick it up and play it. That was my experience in just trying it out, a couple of weeks ago on the Rare Replay, is that it's hard just to pick up and play.
All right, before we finish up today, let's go to this week's mid-episode filler, Would You Rather question. So Conker has a lot of famous movies parodied in Conker's Bad Fur Day. So we thought if the sequel that has never been released and likely won't ever be released did in fact happen, which movie parody would you want to see the most? Give us your thoughts on X and Instagram at Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS Boss Battles, or drop us a line on our website, brothersandbossbattles.com. All right, here are 3 of our suggestions. Feel free to add your own or pick one of these. Toy Story 4. Conker meets a child whose favorite toy is her N64 cartridge of Conker's Bad Fur Day, but the cartridge escapes to find the home of a more skilled player. Conker is tasked with finding the game, bringing joy back to the child, and collecting cash from her parents. The second movie, Avengers Endgame. After eating too many prunes, an old man is pooing uncontrollably out his window, falling on anyone who tries to pass by. Conker and his pals must put on their superhero costumes and find stones for the Infinity Diaper, culminating in an epic struggle to get the diaper on the man, clearing the path ahead. And finally, Top Gun Maverick. Conker reunites with Rodin, the sergeant, and the rest of the Squirrel High Command, this time in an air combat sequence. After insubordination, Conker is punished by being assigned team lead on a mission to destroy a smartphone manufacturing facility, believed to be destroying society. All right, there you have it. Give us your thoughts on those suggestions, and we'll reveal them during the early mid-episode filler portion of next week's Bro Down episode. All right, now back to the show.
So, I mean, at the end of the game, the Panther King is defeated, and Conker sits on the throne with all of a lot of the characters that he helped throughout the game, not altruistically, but basically for his own benefit, sort of, celebrating him, and he's like all annoyed about it, being in company of all these people or characters that he doesn't really like. So that's where it goes, and then it's sort of the cycle like that. That's sort of what they show at the beginning, and you playing the game is like how he got to that point. Anything else you guys want to add before final thoughts?
Yeah, actually, there's two things.
Oh, good.
One's quick, circling back. We were talking about sort of the comedic aspect of the game and the characters. Do you guys remember Rodent in the war part? And he was kind of like the
the friend.
Yeah, the friend. Yeah, I really.
Yeah, he was a good character.
I liked him. Yeah, he was a good character.
Yeah, because he was like sort of like a true, like sort of good, genuine, like sort of character, like meant well and tried to do right.
Yeah, and then there was that one part, I think, where he's kind of leading the way, and then, or no, you're leading the way, and then a baddie approaches you that, like, I guess it explodes, so you have to kind of go behind him, and he goes into his shell because he's scared, and then, so that was cool. I thought that was a cool part, cool character. Again,
that goes to the like different gameplay mechanics.
Yeah.
One other part, since you mentioned the war level again, was when you're in the tank and you need to.
Oh, that was annoying too.
Yeah, that was annoying. You need to shoot there's some kind of support beam that you need to destroy or whatever.
But you have to go along this path, which is like hard to maneuver, and it's like you're in a tank and you're using tank controls, and it's tough.
Yeah, that was tricky.
Yeah, and then you have to get out of the tank, right?
You have to jump over because they have raised ramps. So you have to jump over to the ramp and then.
But again, all these, I don't know, all these parts that we're talking about, like they're challenging. But I didn't feel that they were that annoying. I mean, in the moment, they're frustrating when you fail.
I agree. Yeah. They were tough, but I mean, that's
They were challenging, but I never felt like, I'm never going to do this. So that's good.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
It's funny that just like through this discussion, it really highlights that I think that whole Saving Private Ryan like war level is really, maybe almost as iconic as the giant poo fight, because it's like another part in that level is where you have to. You have those like sort of, I don't know, weaselly looking characters that you get from the bathroom, and then you have to sort of lead them to two areas and then blow them up so that like I don't know, you get to the next part or it creates something that was really tough too. And like that really isn't intuitive so much that like you had to do that. So it's like that also took some figuring out, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, that was me to blow them up to open up like I think it was a door or something.
Right? Yeah. And then there's like, as you're leading them, there's like those spider mines or whatever that'll blow up if you get too close to them.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that, that part wasn't intuitive, and that's just sort of another element of the game.
Yeah.
It wasn't just all straightforward, here's what you have to do, and then, it was a challenge to do it. There were parts where you had to kind of figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And then what do you guys think of Beardy?
Who was that?
The Birdie.
Scarecrow. Yeah.
Oh, Birdie. I don't know. See, that was another thing that I felt was just like some people would be like, "Oh, that's so funny," but I just didn't really find him that funny.
Yeah.
I found him like. And this is something that I thought a lot of the characters were just like kind of like weird, they all like talked weird. And,
I'm sure that was intentional. I don't know. I liked him. I agree. I guess he wasn't funny. Like I wasn't laughing out loud, but I liked him as a character.
He was like basically like a drunk scarecrow. right? I mean,
I guess, yeah.
yeah. So that's what made him talk funny. But it's just,
yeah, I guess that's true.
And I feel like another thing we should at least mention
Mhm.
is the idea of a sequel, right? A lot of people clamor for a sequel, which obviously was never made.
yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess that brings up a couple of interesting points. Like, you know, would a game like this be made today?
I think in terms of like the adult nature of it, that's fine. By today's standard. Yeah, I guess just considering how the first one or how Conker's Bad Fur Day actually did from a financial standpoint, I don't know that it would make sense for like Rare to do this again, to make a sequel. I mean, there would be a lot of people very happy, myself included, if they made a new Conker game.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that. I think it would do really well financially. And like you said, the adult nature of the game, I think there's such a much larger appetite for that now. And
Yeah.
there's like, I could really name a million games that I would forbid my kid to play before Conker, to be honest. Just because this is so cartoony.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't know that there's a huge market for this. I mean, if they keep it similar to Conker's Bad Fur Day, I don't know if people are really interested in playing 3D platformers in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of stuff online about the sequel, right? There was one in the works at one point called Conker's Other Bad Day. And you could actually see some like sketches of like the training level and maybe some maybe another level and just sort of general like story or whatever. The someone at Rare, I forget who it was, who was directly involved in making Conker and the sequel, like shared some specifics. I guess it was going to be a big like Harry Potter parody. What else? Just looking through my notes. The main boss was going to be a giant space poo called Cthulhu Poo, which I think you guys will like.
Yeah.
What else? You were going to learn. You were going to learn about.
We'll be talking some Cthulhu eventually on this show, I think.
Or the teaser. Yeah. So no, it's cool. Like for me, who kind of really liked this game since it was released, it was cool to see the beginnings of a sequel, and it was also kind of sad that it never came to fruition. I don't think it ever will.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Microsoft, I guess, bought Rare, and they nixed the idea and pivoted to the Live and Reloaded. So yeah, I don't think we're ever going to get a sequel.
Yeah. All right, we'll probably start wrapping it up, but I did want to point out that unlike some of the, this could be a good or bad thing, but unlike some of the other 3D platformers of the time, Conker's like move set was relatively simplistic. Like it wasn't where like every hold Z and press down and that does something, and hold Z and press B and that does something, and hold Z and press A that does something, and press left and right and up and down. Like some of the other games that we're going to discuss in this category. It really was just his like his attack move, which was a frying pan or a baseball bat in Live and Reloaded. His sort of hovering with his tail.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Yeah,
basically just jump and attack.
Yeah,
and we discussed the context sensitive. The icon platform, whatever, that kind of got around that, and there was also not a lot of collecting, right? Which is uncommon, right?
Which is different than some of the others. Yep.
Yeah, which in my opinion is a positive. And like I said, kind of at the beginning, I liked the creativity and the uniqueness. Not just in the characters in the story, but also kind of the stuff we're talking about here.
Yeah,
it was different than a lot of the other platformers at the time, 3D platformers.
All right. Let's get final thoughts. I'll actually go first this time. So this may be a function of the fact that I did not play this as a kid back in the early 2000s. And despite some of the positive things I had to say about it, I found it extremely frustrating. At least the version I played, which was from Rare Replay. because of the controls and camera angles. To me, the humor and the other portions of the gameplay weren't so stellar to make up for those issues that I had with the controls that were extremely frustrating at times. And I feel like made this game longer and more difficult than it should have otherwise been. There are interesting parts of this, and more so than any other game. We usually give a recommendation, yay or nay, to play this to listeners, and I can't really think of another game that is sort of putting me on the fence more than this one, honestly. And I didn't play Live and Reloaded, so I can't really say. But to go back and play this on N64 or even the Rare Replay, I'd probably lean towards not recommending it, to be honest. I don't think the good outweighs the frustratingly bad with the controls and camera here. And again, I don't the story and the comedy certainly don't make up for it. So that's my final take on this one. Tom?
Sure. I'll go next. I have a different opinion, obviously, as you probably would have gathered at my other comments throughout this episode. But yeah, I mean, I want to preface these final thoughts by saying that I did play the Live and Reloaded version, and I do strongly believe that this version made a lot of improvements that would have frustrated players of the original game. So we'll keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed replaying this game. In preparation for this episode, like I was, when I wasn't playing it, I was like, man, I really want to get back and play more. And yeah, just like other things that I mentioned already, just the varying gameplay kept things fresh a lot. I really liked Conker as a character, which kept me invested in the game, and seeing what funny things he was going to say next. And I would definitely give this a recommend. Definitely play the live and reloaded version if you can. It seems like it's pretty easily accessible on new Xboxes, or was it Xbox One or
Xbox XS? Yeah.
Xbox X.
Yeah, I think it's $10. You could buy it for $10.
Yeah, so for $10, I think it's well worth it. Go out and enjoy a classic.
All right, Pete, take us home.
All right, yeah. So I also definitely recommend it. Agree. I would suggest just to play the remastered version. It's not the greatest game ever made, but I feel like I don't know, someone who really likes video games, considers himself a good gamer, should experience this game. And there's a lot of things I kind of mentioned throughout the episode. I like the different gameplay elements and the diversity and the uniqueness of the game. And yeah, so there will be times when you're a little frustrated, but again, as I said, it's because it's challenging, but you never feel like, oh, I'm never going to complete this. And one other thing I kind of like about this game is that I feel like you could play this and another game in tandem and kind of go back and forth. Like you're not going to kind of, remove yourself from the story if you take too much of a break. And I feel like if you get into some of those parts, like maybe that lava race, where it's too frustrating for you, could kind of put it down for a few days, play something else, and then come back. And, it almost improves the experience of the game just to, eliminate this high volume of stressing and frustrating moments. So anyway, I loved it as a kid, replayed it now. I still think it's a great game and highly recommend for any true gamer.
All right, there you have it. All right, that's Conker's Bad Fur Day and Conker Live and Reloaded. Next week, Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and Conker will enter the Bro Down Showdown, and we'll see who comes out on top. All right, thanks for listening, everyone. Take care. Have a good one.